What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I hope you like this video. So listen, this is a little late. But I decided that I would come on and talk about it anyway because I think that we should be celebrating whenever we see black excellence, especially a little bit of black girl magic. I definitely want to celebrate. And so this is gonna be my rant and review about the movie Mahalia. Now, Mahalia came out Easter weekend, so that was about 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago. Easter weekend. I was just getting around to watching it. Sorry, it took me so long, but y'all know I was out of town, and then I was trying to get caught up on all my other stuff. So I actually forgot I had taped it and was like, oh shoot, let me go watch it. And so I said, let me come on here and talk a little bit about it. So first of all, it was produced. It was a Robin Roberts presents. So we got some black girl magic. Okay. Danielle Brooks starred in it. A little bit more black girl magic. Okay. And then we had Mahalia Jackson, who was the ultimate black woman magic. I mean, actually, black woman. All of them are black women. So it was a biography. It was a biopic. Danielle Brooks was also a EP on the project as well. And I'm gonna get to my overall, I'm gonna just go through a little bit of the story. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's probably still on demand. It came on Lifetime, and I'm not sure if Lifetime is linked up with any of the streaming services, because a lot of times when stuff comes on, if that particular network is linked up with a streaming service, then you can catch it on that streaming service. I mean, for example, FX is linked up with Hulu. So you can catch stuff on Hulu that came on Netflix, or FX, or you can always catch it on demand. But neither here nor there. I'm sure it is still available. It was only a few weeks ago. I'm sure it's on demand or on Hulu or something like that. So the movie was 2.5 hours long. So I feel like they definitely had more than enough time to tell the story. Now, Mahalia Jackson, I was going to say Mahalia Brooks. I was going to combine Mahalia Jackson and Danielle Brooks. And if those who don't know who Danielle Brooks is, first of all, you should. But if you don't, she started on, well, she's had a wonderful career so far. But she started on Broadway. She was in The Color Purple. But she's also, you might know her, if you're not familiar with her, then you probably know her mostly for her role as Tasty on Orange is the New Black. So y'all can catch her there. But she's been in a lot of things. And like I said, she definitely is very, very multi-talented. Mahalia Jackson has always been my absolute favorite gospel singer. I love biographies. I love reading about people's lives. Now, I must admit that I have not done extensive research on Mahalia Jackson. And so, for me, this was a great opportunity for me to learn more about her life. I've done like light biography skims through things, but I have not done like an in-depth book on her, which I'm going to do now, though. So we find out that Mahalia Jackson, we start with her life like when she's like 9, 10 years old, something like that, 12 years old. She's living with the aunt. You get the impression that the aunt is a little abusive because she got caught singing the blues, and the first thing out her mouth was, am I gonna have to get the strap? Her aunt was like, nah, you ain't gonna get the strap. But you were supposed to get baptized this weekend, and you ain't ready to get baptized. And they had this whole back and forth about, yes, she was ready to get baptized. And her aunt was like, because you sitting here singing the blues. Like, you are, that's, God gave you this talent, and you are wasting it on the blues. And she was like, but God did give me this talent. And people, because they had, like, the people were outside listening to her sing and everything. And she was like, because people, look at what people, I'm bringing happiness to people. They like listening to me sing. Like, look at what's going on. And her aunt was like, She said, God ain't put you here to sing the blues. We done known enough about the blues, the lifestyle that comes. And what I thought was interesting was her aunt was like, it wasn't just the music. It was the lifestyle that came along with the music. And what I took away from that was, and Mahalia actually says it later on in the movie as well, is, about the lifestyle that comes along with it. A lot of clubs and smoking and drinking and, that mindset. And, she was like, so, that's not the life that I want for you. Like, that's not the life that I want for you. But what we find out later on, because we leave off with that scene, and then we sort of fast forward to her being an adult, being married, working, and all of that. So what we find out later on was that her aunt may have been strict, But she was also a very, very, giving woman. She took she took people in, and during the flu epidemic, which I thought was interesting that they would reference the flu epidemic and they would speak on it. Like, you remember when everybody was walking around with masks on? I was like, that wasn't lost on me, Robin Roberts. That wasn't lost on me. She was saying how her aunt took people in, and how during the flu epidemic, it was like 1917, 1918. She was saying how she lost her mom, she lost her grandfather, and it was just a really hard time for her. But her aunt took people in. She took the sick in when a lot of them didn't have anywhere else to go. And so, I got the impression that she appreciated what her aunt did for her, even if she didn't always appreciate how her aunt did it. If that makes sense. But we pick up with her being married. Now, she's married to, he went to college, he was in the military. Seemed like, he loved his wife, but at the end of the day, he had a gambling problem. And so because of his gambling problem, everything with him was led by the desire to make more money, because he had to feed this habit. We see her struggling. She's moved from the South to Chicago, and we see her struggling with being able to fit in with the idea of what gospel music should sound like in a church. We see her singing, and she's doing what she's always done, and she's giving a little extra, and the pastor was like, oh, no, that's not what we do here. Okay, we sing it. We don't add all that little bumping and weaving and bopping and bopping here. We don't do that. That is not pleasing to God. And Mahalia was like, okay, but God gave me this. Like, this is how we sing in the South. Like, this is how we give praise in the South. And I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not being disrespectful to God. I'm just, this is how I was taught to praise, And so she meets up with a woman who ends up becoming her really good friend. She played the piano. And she becomes her friend. She sticks with her all the way through. And what I have learned, well, let me not say that because I'm not sure. What I was going to say was what I've learned with a lot of these biopics is that they take characters who may not necessarily be that one person forever, but sometimes it's like a combination of people throughout the life of. So I'm not sure if this piano player was really the one person that stuck with her throughout her life, or if it was like a representation of that. So I have to do my own research and find out. But what we found out though was that she sent her, to a guy that was supposed to teach her how to sing, and she said, listen, this just ain't who I am. Like, either people are going to accept how I do it and how I sing and the gift that God gave me, or I'm gonna have to find another way to praise him, because I'm not gonna stop praising God. Like, let's be clear, I'm not gonna stop praising God. And so her husband sent her on this audition, and we find out that she has been offered multiple opportunities to make big money to sing the blues. Like, people have heard her voice and they have loved her voice, but they didn't want her singing gospel. I mean, even now, in current days, gospel music, it's not the most lucrative form. I mean, there are some people who go into gospel and they do make good money, but it's not the most lucrative form, And so back then it was even less lucrative. As a matter of fact, Mahalia Jackson actually was one of those gospel artists that was able to take it and make a lot of money in the gospel arena. And so we see, that basically, we her first marriage ended up pretty much dissolving from a combination of her not wanting to conform, and take the easy money, and her husband, having a gambling problem, and not really wanting to work, wanting to spend all day at the track. So it was a combination of things. Along the way, we see her pick up a child who she ends up adopting. I'm sure it was very informal at the time, because she found him out in front of one of her auditions, and he came home with her, and it seems like he just kind of never left, right? And we also find that her ex-husband, with the first husband, mother or grandmother had a makeup company and sold the formula to them, and so she started making beauty products, and she actually became a hairstylist, a cosmetologist. Now back then, I'm sure that the the licensing and all that probably wasn't on the same level. Like if you knew how to, bump a curl, you probably could open up a storefront, which it looks like she did. Now, what we found out though is that Mahalia Jackson was not only a very savvy businesswoman, but a very successful one. Even before she became Mahalia Jackson, she owned the beauty business. She owned the salon, and not only did she own the salon, she owned the building that her salon was in and rented out the upper rooms. I think they said she had like 4 or 5 apartments that she was renting out. And so she was doing very well for herself financially um, before she ever became a recording artist or a popular recording artist. We see her meet with I think it was Apollo Records, and the woman again was like, your voice is beautiful, we could do something with you here. But of course they wanted her to do pop, and once again, blues, excuse me. And once again she had to explain to that woman, listen, every Negro can sing the blues. That's because that's how we had to live. um they We see her cut her first single, and the woman said, listen, I can't give you a record deal if you don't want to sing anything but gospel, but I'll give you 2 free hours in the studio. That's the best I can do. And she said, I need clarification. You mean 2 hours in the studio from the minute we press record, or just 2 hours in the studio? She said, no, from the minute we press record. She said, okay, cool. And she actually was in the studio all damn night because she wanted to get it perfect and get it right before they hit that record button, right? Once again, just showing that she's no dummy. While she was there, there was a guy there, and she assumed that the guy was there from the record company. He was a black guy to keep her in line. We've seen him before. He's played a lot of, actually the last few times I've seen him, he's played a lot of shady characters. I forget his real name, but if you watch the series of Soul Train, he played Don Cornelius's gangster partner. If you watched Underground, he played the little shyster, the light skin with the finger waves. So if you've seen him before, if you've been around black cinema, and again, off the top of my head, I forget his name, but he always plays a good role. The sad thing is that because I usually see him playing a shyster, I kept waiting for him to do something to her. I kept waiting for him to take advantage of her, to treat her bad. But ultimately, he was probably the love of her life. Like, they ended up, he was a pastor from New Jersey, from Atlantic City, as a matter of fact. And it looks like they never, well, not looks like, in the movie, they never got married. And he eventually died of bone cancer. But it seemed like he was the love of her life. They dated for like 3 or 4 years. And he did ask her to marry him. They never quite got around to doing it. And then he got sick and he died. But definitely, it doesn't seem like he was a bad man to her. It seemed like he really, really did love her. He just kind of had his own life in Atlantic City, and she had her own life, and they never made it a priority to figure that out, right? The single becomes a hit. This white DJ who normally doesn't even listen to gospel, but just fell in love with her voice, played it on his radio show, and it went on to sell 1 million copies. So we see now she's become Mahalia Jackson, and we see that she's had the opportunity to sing at Carnegie Hall, and she's fighting it tooth and nail. And by this time, at this point in the movie, I'm sitting here going, okay, we're doing too much now. Because in my mind, because she kept talking about every time she didn't want to do something, she always used God as her excuse. Oh, well, God, that's not what God wants me to do. That ain't the vision God gave me. That ain't God's plan for me. But what we found out is that a lot of times it was fear. She opened up to the boyfriend, the pastor from Atlantic City, and she admitted she was scared to play Carnegie Hall. She was scared, and she said, I'm not an opera singer. I'm not trained. I didn't even finish school. What's going to happen? I get up there and they laugh at me, or I'm not what they expect, So she used God as the excuse when something was outside of her comfort zone and her wheelhouse, right? We also see her building a relationship with her the woman that ended up becoming her pianist for most of her career. Um, um, I'm only gonna tell y'all the whole story. I know I'm telling a whole lot, but it was I enjoyed it. But I'm gonna only talk a few more minutes, and then I want y'all to go watch it, and then I'll tell y'all my 2 cents on it. Anyway, so we find out that uh, they have a tumultuous relationship because Mahalia looks for perfection in everyone, but really doesn't see perfection in anyone. And the two of them end up really getting into a really, really bad argument later on in the movie. And one of the things that the pianist brings up is the reason why the reason why you can't be satisfied with what anybody does for you is because you can't find that satisfaction in yourself. Like you look for perfection in everyone else because you don't have enough confidence in yourself, and you know that you're not perfect. Um, we see that the relationship with her adopted son ended up falling apart because when she got, popular and was making money and stuff, he said that she got a big head. He it seemed like because he had a voice when she met him, he was singing, so we knew he could sing, and he started singing, jazz. He was in the jazz clubs and stuff, and she was very critical of that and told him, basically you need to get out them jazz clubs, like, and I'm sure she held her money over his head because she was that kind of person. And I'm not saying that to be disparaging, y'all. It was in the movie that she, was very critical. Excuse me. And she would hold and use use her money as a tool to control people. They addressed her health issues and the fact that she ended up having to have a hysterectomy, which took away the ability for her to actually have a baby. And Danielle Brooks said that she thought that was important because it's not, women's health is not talked about a lot. And I talk about that on my platform. If you guys have been following me on my platform, we've had that conversation a few times about women's health, and especially when it comes to Black women and what we say and what we don't say and how we're treated and versus, our white counterparts, and, the long-term effects on Black women as far as our health, especially when it comes to our reproductive health. So I thought that was good that they brought that up. Ultimately, they also explore her relationship with Martin Luther King Jr. Some of you who saw the movie Selma may have been introduced to the fact that they had a really close relationship, but they absolutely did. His camp first reached out to her when the Montgomery bus boycott was going on to sing at a rally, and their relationship sort of stemmed from there. A lot of people may or may not know, at the March on Washington, she was the one that told him to talk about the dream. That's not the first time Martin Luther King had spoken on his dream. And it became iconic, obviously, in that moment. We all remember the March on Washington for the I Have a Dream speech. But Mahalia was the one that told him to talk about it. And you can actually, anybody who's seen that clip, you can actually hear her saying, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." And they put that in the movie. So I thought that was cool. We see that she did end up getting remarried. She was lonely. It was after her pianist fell out. It was after her son stopped talking to her. And so she ended up dating a guy and marrying him very, very quickly, that a lot of people feel like probably was a mistake, and ultimately it was. Now, they don't really get too deep in the movie about how bad the marriage was, but if you read up on it, there were accusations of domestic abuse. He actually tried to take her in the divorce. He actually tried to take her, for some money and some property. Ultimately, the judge ruled against it. They also bring up in the movie how when she did get, popular and had some money, she moved into a very affluent white neighborhood, and how they shot up her house, and the police ended up having to put, protection on her home because she was Mahalia Jackson. She did get protection, but the fact that she, moved into a very affluent neighborhood. So the movie, I'm gonna give the movie overall, I'm gonna give the movie an A-, and I'm gonna tell you why I'm gonna give it the minus. Because if it wasn't for this one little bit, and I know this is gonna sound petty, y'all, but that's why I said A and just gave it a minus instead of, I didn't drop it down a whole grade. Two things that I had a problem with. The first one that I had a problem with was, I hate biopics that don't tell me when and how the person died. I I really wish, because the movie ended basically because she got sick and she was, wasn't touring and wasn't traveling consistently for a while, and so the movie ended with her comeback, and it shows her and her pianist reconciling prior to her death. But that's where it ends. It ends with her singing. And I kept waiting for like something to come up on the screen to say, Mahalia Jackson died on such and such a day from such and such causes. She never reconciled with her son, or her and her son finally reconciled. Like, I was waiting. See, I like a full closure. Even if the full closure is just knowing what happened, not saying that it's a happy ever ending. So, like, her and her son, maybe they never did speak again. Maybe they never reconciled. I would have liked to know that. Like, we spent this whole movie seeing their relationship, seeing him grow up, and then he just disappeared. And they mentioned the fact that he just doesn't speak to her anymore. But then that's it. And I don't know what it is. I can't stand biopics where you don't tell me what happened to the person. Like, tell me how she died. Like, the last thing we see of her is in 1971. She died in 1972. So my thing is, like, I literally had to go Google it because I forgot. I knew she died from an illness, but I forgot. Now, they talking about in the movie that she had sarcoidosis, which is what Bernie Mac died from. And she ended up getting sick and having a bowel blockage and had to have surgery, and she died from complications from the surgery. So, but yeah, so I definitely think it was a great movie. Kudos to you, Robin Roberts. Kudos to you, Danielle Brooks. Kudos to Lifetime. And for taking a chance on a character, I ain't gonna say character, a woman like Mahalia Jackson. What I mean by taking a chance is because she was definitely the mother of gospel, right? And you know who Mahalia Jackson is, even if you're not into gospel. But I think that when it's not like a marquee person, you always take that chance that they're not going to get the play. And I think Lifetime did a really good job of publicizing it. Like, they've been teasing this Mahalia Jackson biopic since January, when the Salt and Pepper biopic dropped. Like, it was in the promos for the Salt and Pepper. And so I feel like throughout these last 4 or 5 months, like, it is absolutely, a lot of times I think we feel like they don't give us the same attention for our movies. And so I feel like Lifetime definitely did that. Like, I feel like it gave just as much attention to Mahalia as it did Wendy Williams and Salt and Pepper. It was definitely out there. And I just think it was done well. The thing about a biopic is that you can't put every single thing about a person's life, especially someone like a Mahalia Jackson who lived, 60-something years. Well, 60, carried to, yeah, a long time, okay? It's you don't always have that. And even in a 2.5-hour film, I feel like they covered a lot. Now, was there more? Sure, there was more that they could have talked about, but I feel like they gave us a lot. So with that being said, what I like again is, even though she was a gospel artist and she definitely loved God, they showed us her flaws. They showed us her flaws, and they did not romanticize her personality from the very beginning. They showed that she had a hard personality, and she was a very hard woman to please. And as she got more and more popular and made more and more money, she was a lot harder to please. Not because, I don't think she became a diva. I think she just felt more pressure to be perfect. And as a result, she pushed that on everybody else. And she never said, hey, I'm not the one that's not perfect. My pianist isn't perfect. The lighting isn't perfect. This isn't perfect. It was never on her. And so I appreciate the fact that they showed us that. But anyway, y'all let me know what y'all think or what y'all thought. If you haven't seen it, go look at it and let me know what you think. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.